All of the instructions are in German. Oh, you're kidding me. I do not speak German. This is good. Hang on. I think I know what to do. This is Doc Anderson, the Flying Squirrel. Today we're in Microsoft Flight Simulator with a Cessna 172. I want to talk about how I use things like games and flight simulators to get more work done. Because piloting your ADHD brain may be the most important skill you ever learn. Today, I want to talk about working memory and how we can make doing complicated tasks easier. But first, let's get this plane started so we can get into the air. Okay, there's the key. And let me get over here so I can see it. And the mouse is not quite like turning it with fingers. There we go. So we're just going to turn that over and nothing. Actually, starting up a plane is a little more complicated than starting a car, usually.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Starting a plane has a few more steps. First of all, you got to make sure you have fuel, and we'll take the cutoff, and right down here is our fuel selector. Make sure that is in the middle to both. There we go. And the fuel mixture right there, make sure that's full rich. The throttle all the way out, maybe cracked a little. And we also need electricity. There's the battery. Let me get the yoke out of the way. There we go. There's the battery and the alternator. Here we go. The beacon light, let everyone know we're about to start. And now let's try it. And she roars to life. I love that sound. Okay. Now we need the avionics. Got it? Turn on our other lights, nav, taxi, all of that. Perfect. We're good to go. So starting up a plane like this, even a simple one, is pretty complicated. Pilots have very, very exhaustive checklists to make sure they cover everything. Pilots rely on these checklists. They're not expected to pull all of this out of their head alone. As you can see, the 172 has a very extensive checklist. But let's do something silly. Here we are in the JU-52. As you can see, it's a bit larger aircraft, a bit more complicated, more stuff going on, a lot more confusing. And hang on. All of the instructions are in German. Oh, you're kidding me. I do not speak German. This is good. Hang on. I think I know what to do. I'll be right back. Okay, I have spared no expense. Just for you, I have completely retrofitted this plane with modern controls and English labels. Which, by completely retrofit, I mean I loaded up the modern plane in Microsoft Flight Simulator because it's going to take me a while to learn the German version. And I got a video to put out here. So, there you go. So, let's get things started. It's really not much different than the 172. It's just there's more engines, 3 of them. But we do have the 3 engine master switches on the back panel. Those have to be turned on. Close the covers. Excellent. And now let's get to starting this puppy. Okay. Batteries on. Electricity, fuel, and air. And bubble pump is free. Make sure the props are full RPM, mixture full rich, and the throttle's all the way back. So we're going to pump some fuel into the system, the wobble pump. Modern refit, but it is still an old plane, so it's got the old-fashioned wobble pump. Okay. And we've got our starter safety. Check. Bring the oil for engine 1 to start. magnetos to both, and turn it over. And there she goes. Oh, that old radial engine. Gotta love that sound. I love this stuff so much. Okay, engine 2. Oil to start, magnetos to both, and turn it over. And looking at the gauges, making sure she catches. And we've got start on engine 2. Rinse and repeat with last engine. Okay. Oil to start. Magnetos. Turn it over. Dial up top. Let it settle out. And there we go. We have 3 engines going, and I better put on the parking brake. Otherwise, it's going to pull us forward, and hitting something with the plane is a bad idea. And let's turn on the pitot heat. Get rid of that warning light up there. The only thing left looks like fuel pressure. And there we go. That comes off as we bring the engine up. Alright, looking good. Check through everything. And it's going to take a little bit for the oil to come up to temperature, so we have to wait for that before we can do anything else. Check through parts. And now we need to set the oil to run. Wrong way. Oil to run. And there we go. And close the starter safety switch cover. And we got 3 radial engines roared to life. Let's take care of our lights, and those are the interior lights. That's not what I'm looking for. There we go. Okay. Man, strobe, taxi, stuff, junk. All the lights. Obviously, I am not going through a hard checklist because I'm not a pilot, and I'm not going for total realism. I'm doing this because it's fun. Okay, generator 2. 1, and pop the clutch on the trim. Interesting thing with the JU-52 is that the fuel gauges are out on the engine, and that tall thing is actually the oil dipstick, so you can see the oil quantity. This is a fabulous old plane. Flew in the 1930s and 40s. Absolute classic, and it's just cool. Love flying it. So let's get this thing in the air. Take off the parking brake. Give it a little bit of throttle, and we are rolling. This is a big plane. Gotta give it a little space. It does not turn as nimbly as the little 172. Here we go. Okay. Got it in the center of the taxiway, more or less. And slowly going through down the taxiway. You don't want to rush this. Plane can get away from you really, really quick. So you want to taxi slow, take things easy. This is not the Autobahn, which is German. And so's the plane, but the two are not going to go well together. I'm going to have to try landing this in the Autobahn sometime. Okay, that could be fun. Sorry, I just went somewhere else for a moment. I'm back now. Mustn't let my attention wander, because I need to turn onto the runway. There we go. So gotta do this on the Autobahn. That begs to be done. Okay, get this thing on the right. Just about ran it off the runway there. Okay, and this is a tail dragger, which means if you brake too hard, you're going to put this thing on its nose, and that is not pretty. I've done it. I will do it again, I'm sure. Thank goodness this is a simulator. Bring it to a stop gently and bounce that tail wheel. Okay, let's put this sucker into the sky. Close things up. There we go. Mouse. Still hear those engines. All right. Looks good. Okay, parking brake off. And we're going to advance the throttle. 3 great, big, glorious radial engines roar to life. The tail on this thing's going to come up pretty quick. Oh, there it is. And that surprised me the first time it happened. Keep it in the center of the runway, dance on the rudder a little bit. And I'm running empty, except for fuel. So this is a real light plane, so it takes off in no space at all. So we are up and flying. And bring the flaps up. And we're off. And we're going to be flying to the east toward the St. Louis downtown airport. This is my regular flight that I do when I need a transition, when I need an activity that takes about a half hour to change my brain. I fly from Spirit of St. Louis, Chesterfield, to downtown St. Louis airport, KSUS to KCPS. Takes about a half hour-ish. And is a lovely little piece of brain bleach that if I just need a break from something, I can do that. And so we're going to bring it around to the east. This plane handles so docilely. It just floats. It is absolutely amazing. Okay. There we go. Even it out. See if we can't trim this a bit. Like a lot of ADHDers, I really struggle with things like routine, morning routines, evening routines, work routines, routines, because routines are boring. And we don't do boring. ADHD brains stall on boring. It takes us below our minimum speed and we fall out of the sky. What lights up our brains is interesting. Interesting is the gas that makes our brains go. And for me, that's airplanes and rockets and stuff, which is why I love flying the flight simulator. It just lights up my brain like nothing else. And it's actually the flight simulator that got me to realize I can do routines. I struggled with that all my life. I could never, ever figure out how to do a morning routine or an evening routine because there were always other things that would come up that were more important, less important, but more interesting, or whatever. And I realized at one point that I really suck at doing routines because it's boring. But I fly these flight simulators and I love these old, complicated, multi-engine planes. And what I realized is I'm really good at complicated safety and startup checklists. Those kind of make my brain go. Well, our ADHD brains are high-performance machines. They really are, like a race car or a fighter plane. But too often we try to pilot them like a family car or, an ultralight airplane. They're way more complicated than that. And if you don't do the startups and the maintenance right, our brains stall. We experience overwhelm. Happens all the time. Well, I realized I'm really good at pilot checklists. So I've created checklists for my brain. I've created a morning startup routine, a morning startup engine checklist that makes sure I get into my day right. I've created an evening checklist that makes sure that I shut everything down in a way that works for me. And I can't tell you how important that is, because with ADHD, we can really struggle with things like good sleep. And if we don't have good sleep, then that upsets everything else. It's kind of a keystone thing. The problem is routines can feel like a cage. And that just turns our brain off. We just don't go there. If we're given something that isn't ours, it feels like a prison. A routine is a prison. But the other thing I figured out is that if we have something that gives us comfort that we enjoy, like, I don't know, a flight simulator, you can have that when you can pry it from my cold dead fingers. Thank you very much. So what's the difference between a prison and a fortress? A prison keeps things in, a fortress keeps things out. So a routine that's not ours is a prison, and a routine that gives us comfort is a fortress that makes us feel safe and that we want to do. So I leaned into the comfort thing with my morning and evening routines, and I built around those things that gave me comfort, the things that I need to do that are good for my brain. And because they give me comfort, I've really latched onto them, and I can't not do them. We've jumped ahead a little bit, coming up on downtown St. Louis. You can see the arch down there as we make our turn into the St. Louis downtown airport, and there's our runway in front of us. One of the things I do with Flight Simulator, in addition to transition flights, is I will take a longer flight, especially in a larger airplane like this, get it up in the air, which gives me a nice dopamine hit and gets my brain going, and then I will fly the plane and put on an audiobook, because I've learned that audiobooks are what I use to put my brain to sleep. I use them a lot at night so I can get to sleep. But as a result, when I want to listen to them, it's really hard. So I discovered that if I put an audiobook on while I fly a plane, the plane becomes the most wonderful fidget that occupies my brain. And once I get it up in the air, and it doesn't take a lot of maintenance, and I just occasionally checking the gauges and all of that, I can listen to an audiobook and concentrate on it, take notes, and learn. It's really helped a lot. There's all kinds of ways that we can use these things that naturally light up our brains, and video games, for a lot of ADHDers, they light up our brains. That's what they're designed to do. But because we're starved for dopamine, we kind of get addicted to them in a way. And instead of doing the whole video games bad, video games evil, don't do video games, which is a lot of crap, I'm choosing to use that dopamine leverage to actually accomplish things. Now, can I get sucked down the rabbit hole? Yes, I can. And I do, and I have, and I will. Nothing is ever perfect. We're gonna talk about ADHD and perfectionism another time. But this is about using what does light up my brain so that I can prime the pump for action and for progress and for productivity, more than productivity, for accomplishment, for doing the things that are important. And I need to start paying attention here as I line up. I've dropped the throttle level, and I'm bringing it in, and we'll line this up straight. There are so many ways that this kind of stuff just lights my brain up, and that's a tool. And any tool can be the right tool, but any tool can also be the wrong tool. The key to piloting your ADHD brain is first pausing, stopping, figuring out what does work for you, what really works, not what we want to work, what actually has an impact, not what we think will have an impact. And doing those things and making mistakes and doing things badly, because that's how we learn to do things, and saying it's okay, as long as that's not what I'm settling for. Okay, let me be careful here. I'm coming in a little fast. I'm talking to you and I'm not watching my speed. And so I've got, there we go. Pull it in, and again, this is a tail dragger. So you gotta kind of watch these things all the way to the gate, because they can get away from you any number of ways. There we go. I think we're down. Anyway, piloting your ADHD brain is a lot like piloting an airplane. If you don't do it right, you're gonna crash and burn, and we have had so much experience with that happening. But it doesn't have to. We need a little flight training. We need a little specialized training to be able to fly our ADHD brains and bring them in safely. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear about the kinds of things that this makes you think about doing. What sort of things light up your brain? What creates that dopamine that we need so we can take action? How could you use this kind of thing to actually put you into a place of productivity? Has this been useful to you? If it has, do me a favor. Like and subscribe, because I want to grow this channel, and I want to know that I'm just not talking into the void. It'll also make a difference because it'll train the algorithm to show this kind of content to others who might find it useful. And click the bell to be notified when new videos come out. Because our ADHD goldfish brains often forget, and you can't forget what you don't have to remember in the first place. This is Doc Anderson, the Flying Squirrel. Thank you for coming along today. Glad you were with me. Remember, practice makes progress, not perfect, and piloting your ADHD brain takes practice.